I just folded the last of our laundry when the thick cream-colored envelope slid from Emily's coat pocket and landed at my feet. The seal, two interlocking gold H's, looked like something out of an old European fairy tale. Inside were two black-tie VIP tickets to a closed opera ball, Vienna State Opera, July 14th. I felt my chest tighten. Emily's never been into opera. Last month she'd called Puccini, that Italian guy who writes sad stuff. But what rocked me harder were the messages hidden behind the tickets. Screenshots she must have printed for safekeeping. Can't wait to whirl you across the marble floor. Vienna will never forget us. Promise me the press won't pry too hard. They'll be too busy chasing their own tails, darling. My fiancée of 4 years, my high school sweetheart from Indianapolis, looked, on paper, like she'd just accepted the role of secret lover to some Austrian aristocrat. Only 3 weeks ago, we'd been mapping out table arrangements for our November wedding. Now she was apparently plotting waltzes with a count whose name sounded lifted from a period drama. Panic ran circles in my brain, colliding with the heavier truth. My little nephew Liam's leukemia treatments had drained every spare dollar we had. Emily knew how every hospital invoice made me feel useless. If she'd found another way to bankroll her tastes, I couldn't blame her for lack of motive. Only for secrecy. That night, while she was out meeting a client in Chicago, I drained our rainy day fund and booked the first economy seat to Vienna. 32 sleepless hours later, I was staggering through Schwechat Airport, clutching a rental tux in a plastic bag. The whole flight I'd replayed her laugh, the way she'd tucked hair behind her ear last Tuesday, everything that now felt leased, not owned. By the time I caught the cat train into the city, the red roofs and Baroque domes outside the window looked like the backdrop to my own humiliation. I checked into a modest pension across from the opulent Hotel Soccer, certain I'd see her walk in on someone else's arm. I didn't have long to wait. At dusk, a black Mercedes pulled beneath the hotel's green awning. Emily stepped out in a midnight blue gown that kissed the pavement, her hair pinned with pearls I'd never seen before. Beside her stood a tall man in a tailcoat, silver hair, posture of royalty, the very image of Alexander von Hohenberg from the screenshots. They laughed, their heads almost touching, then glided through the revolving door like a practiced couple. Every instinct screamed to storm in, but I froze, pinned to the crowd control railing like an exhibit labeled devoted fool. Instead, I trailed them, heart hammering, as they crossed the red carpet lobby and disappeared into the velvet elevator. I caught the floor number 7, then spent 20 stomach-churning minutes bribing a bellhop for a staff pass to the ballroom balconies. The opera house was already humming. Chandeliers ablaze, strings rehearsing a Strauss overture, paparazzi clustered at the entrance hoping for scandal. From the upper gallery, I watched Emily swirl onto the dance floor with Alexander. Reporters' flashes popped. She laughed louder, tossed her hair, placed a hand flirtatiously on his chest. I felt each gesture like a pin under my fingernails. When the orchestra slid into the blue Danube, they moved as if the world were a snow globe, and someone had just shaken it for them alone. I clenched the brass rail until my knuckles bleached, rehearsing confrontations in my mind, cruel one-liners, wounded monologues. Yet I couldn't my feet move. During the intermission, I lost them. Desperation pushed me through corridors lined with Habsburg portraits until I spotted Emily again, this time slipping through a side door with Alexander toward a private salon. I followed, breath shallow. Behind the half-closed door I heard low voices, hers, his, and a third, softer and distinctly feminine. The words were muffled, but a phrase leapt out in English. The title is safe, for now. Something struck glass, followed by laughter, quick and joyous. It felt obscene, hearing her laugh while my throat burned with betrayal. I pushed the door open. 3 faces turned toward me. Emily's eyes went wide, not guilty, but startled, like I'd materialized from smoke. Alexander straightened, but it was the third person who stepped forward. An elegant woman in a tailored tuxedo, honey blonde hair, aquamarine brooch catching the candlelight. Up close, her features echoed Alexander's, yet were unmistakably her own. She spoke first, voice calm but firm. "Tyler, right? I'm Alexandra von Hohenberg. I'm technically Alexander's cousin." She hesitated on cousin the way people pause before surgeon or astronaut, waiting for impact. I realize this looks terrible. Emily gripped my arm. Ty, listen. I can explain in one breath, but you have to let me. Words jammed in my throat. I nodded, afraid anger might detonate if I opened my mouth. Alexandra continued. A month ago, our family lawyers decided I could inherit the courtesy title only if I presented a suitable companion of note at tonight's ball. Archaic nonsense, but it keeps certain properties out of the government's hands. Alexander offered, but the gossip sites already know him. We needed fresh distraction, something splashy enough to send tabloids chasing shadows. Emily volunteered to play the scandalous American mistress. Emily squeezed my hand. I kept it from you because I knew how it would look, but the deal came with a donation clause. The von Hohenbergs have the medical foundation that pioneered the immunotherapy Liam needs. Tonight buys him full coverage, every treatment, every trial. The tiled floor seemed to tilt. My anger, all molten moments ago, hardened into a dumb, brittle shell. So none of this, I gestured at gowns, violins, the city glittering outside, is about you cheating? Emily shook her head fiercely. I love you. I'd never trade us for waltzes and headlines. I just couldn't bear watching you sell your motorcycle, your dad's watch, everything, to keep Liam's IV dripping. Alexandra produced a slim folder, embossed with the same gold H's. Inside was a signed grant agreement to Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. Liam Jackson named beneficiary. The total pledge swam before my eyes. 7 figures, enough to buy not just time, but hope. I exhaled, the breath quivering out of me like a string finally cut. The jealousy, the red-eyed flight, the raw suspicion, everything cracked and slid away, leaving only the quiet of polished parquet and a cello warming up in the pit below. Emily's fingers found mine, intertwining with resolve. Somewhere in the opera house, the conductor tapped his baton, summoning dancers back to the hall. A fresh waltz unfolded, its opening bars gentle, forgiving. Alexander offered a small bow. Shall we? The press is waiting to misinterpret our every move. I laughed, actually laughed, at the absurdity. Lead on, Your Highness. Let's give them a story they'll never untangle. Emily's answering smile was all the closure I needed. And as we stepped into the luminous throng together, I realized betrayal had never landed in Vienna. Only love, disguised for a greater good, dancing in borrowed shoes. The flashbulbs detonated the moment we re-entered the ballroom, a strobe storm of questions ricocheting across gilt ceilings. Miss Madison, are you abandoning your Midwest fiancé? Count von Hohenberg, is this your secret American affair? My pulse spiked, but Alexandra merely leaned in and whispered, all part of the performance. So I improvised a part for myself. Jealous hometown boyfriend crashing the royal soiree. Emily's hand brushed my lapel, almost apologetic. Then she spun away with Alexandra for a photo that looked every inch the scandal du jour. I let the cameras snag a perfectly wounded expression before ducking to the bar. The pianist slid into Gershwin to amuse the American interloper. Somewhere between the second chorus of Someone to Watch Over Me and the toast Alexandra raised to Unruly Love, the headline wrote itself. By midnight, the deed was done. Tabloid bloggers in LA and New York already spewed theories, but the real transaction lay in a signed addendum in the coat room. The foundation would wire Liam's treatment money at Monday's opening bell. Alexandra shook my hand like a senator sealing a bill. Emily mouthed "thank you" over her champagne flute, and for the first time in 48 hours my ribcage didn't feel like it was caught in an airport X-ray machine. We skipped the after-party to wander Vienna's Ringstrasse. Summer air smelled of linden blossoms and horse carriage leather. Emily kicked off her heels, carrying them like trophies while recounting how she'd practiced curtsies on YouTube the week before. I told her how I'd nearly passed out in the coach seat over the Atlantic. Somewhere near the Staatsoper, we stopped beneath a street lamp. Next time, I said, we solve problems together, not by staging international soap operas. She nodded, eyes bright, and kissed me with the city humming like a distant overture. 2 days later, we were back in Indianapolis, running on airport coffee and relief. The hospital elevator chimed its way to the pediatric oncology floor, and there was Liam, 8 years old, wired to an IV tower like a brave little astronaut. When I told him a real count had paid for his medicine, he blinked and asked if that made him a knight. Emily bowed low, presenting her pearl hairpin as a makeshift sword. "Arise, Sir Liam," she said, and the kid's grin outshone every chandelier in Vienna. That evening, while Liam slept, Emily and I sat in the parking lot twilight, cicadas buzzing like static. We drafted new vows on a takeout napkin: radical honesty, weird adventures only by joint consent, monthly check-ins where we ask, "Are we still us?" The ink smeared where tears, or maybe sweat, hit the paper, but the words held. The opera, the gossip columns, the royal cousins, they'd all fade into footnotes. What mattered was this cracked open version of us, rebuilt with brass tacks truth and a little European glitter. I slid my arm around her shoulders, felt her lean in, and realized betrayal hadn't just been disproved. It had been repurposed, melted down, and reforged into something stronger. Some couples keep souvenirs. We kept a scandal that saved a life. And in the quiet Indiana dusk, that felt like the most faithful kind of ending. 3 weeks slipped by in a swirl of inbox pings and caller ID roulette that read like the cast list of a Regency novel. Reporters dug up my freshman year tweets, an influencer claimed she'd seen me crying in business class, and a late-night host joked that Indianapolis had finally produced its own royal scandal. Emily set her phone to Do Not Disturb and powered through wedding cake tastings as if buttercream could silence TMZ. I tried to focus on work, back-end debugging at a fintech startup, but every Slack notification felt like someone tapping my shoulder asking, "So Tyler, how's Austria?" One Monday our CEO summoned me, concerned knitting his eyebrows. "You all right, man?" HR flagged a background search. "It says you're entangled with foreign nobility." He grinned, half fascinated, half terrified of compliance paperwork. I exhaled the Vienna Opera House in one sentence: kid with leukemia, fake affair, donation sealed. Silence hung a beat, then he clapped my back. "Take Friday off, bring back strudel." The rumor mill, starved of fresh drama, moved on to Angela from marketing, who'd accidentally CC'd her ex in a mass email. Emily and I scheduled a Zoom with Alexandra to finalize the foundation's endowment. She joined from a study lined floor to ceiling with leather spines, hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. "The transfer cleared," she announced, sliding a PDF receipt across the screen. "Tyler, your nephew's hospital confirmed." For a second I couldn't speak. The relief felt too big for a webcam. Emily reached for my hand. On her ring finger, the sapphire I'd given her years ago caught the afternoon light, looking newly unshakable. That same night Mom called. She'd binged every podcast covering the Vienna vortex, as Reddit had labeled our saga, and demanded the unvarnished version. When I finished, breathless, expecting scolding, she only said, "Baby, you did what good men do. You chased love. Next time, pack a carry-on and your humility." Dad shouted in the background, "Tell him to send schnitzel." It felt like being folded back into a safety net I hadn't realized was still there. 2 Saturdays later, we drove to Chicago for Liam's first post-grant treatment. He wore a Captain America hoodie and insisted on rolling his own IV pole like a superhero weapon. During the chemo drip, I read him The Hobbit, pausing whenever nurses checked vitals. Emily sketched caricatures, Liam as a knight jousting a green dragon labeled Cancer. Each beep of the infusion pump etched something permanent in me. A gratitude too solid for words, shaped partly by my earlier suspicion, tempered now into resolve. Outside the clinic, breeze riffling hospital flags, Emily said she'd emailed the Vienna tickets back to Alexander with a thank you note. "No regrets," she added, "but I'm ready for our own soundtrack, one that doesn't require tux rentals." That night, while Liam slept, we ordered deep dish pizzas and drafted a new guest list. The wedding would downshift from 200 seats to 60, backyard fairy lights instead of a ballroom. My buddy Jake offered a Bluetooth speaker and 3 kegs. Aunt Marie promised pies that could outsing any opera. The only extravagance we kept was a string quartet for Liam's grand entrance as junior groomsman, cape included. As RSVPs trickled in, the last puzzle piece clicked: my own forgiveness. I realized I'd treated trust like a glass ornament, beautiful but brittle. Vienna proved it could be more like tempered steel, heated, hammered, suddenly stronger. So on a blue-skied September evening, beneath lanterns strung between oak trees, Emily walked down an aisle of sun-bleached grass. Alexandra attended via live stream, toasting with elderflower champagne from a castle balcony. Alexander mailed a first-edition Strauss score, which our quartet played as Emily reached me. Liam, bald but beaming, carried the rings on a pillow decorated with cartoon heroes. I took Emily's hands and began vows rewritten after Vienna. I'll follow you across oceans when I'm scared. I'll believe the best of you when evidence is thin, and I'll fight like hell for our family, even if that means dancing with strangers under crystal chandeliers. Her answering smile glinted like the Danube at dusk, and when the officiant declared us married, cicadas surged into applause louder than any opera chorus. Somewhere headlines kept spinning, but ours faded at last into archival footnotes. What remained was the steady rhythm of two hearts in sync, no waltz score needed, just the everyday music of promises kept.